Welcome to the Nifty Noon podcast. So imagine knowing there is this digital vault out there holding billions of dollars and, well, a clock is just ticking down to the exact second. A supercomputer shatters the lock.
Yeah, the classic Q-Day scenario.
Exactly. For years, that has been the ultimate boogeyman hanging over crypto. But what if you could prove you owned the contents of that vault and just move them to safety without ever exposing the original lock to the network?
Which is exactly the kind of collision we saw this week.
Right. We are unpacking a massive week for you today. It is really defined by this clash between legacy crypto infrastructure, theoretical future threats, and just the sheer force of modern institutional realities. And, it is all happening right in front of us.
But the velocity of the changes we're tracking in this deep dive is honestly staggering.
It really is. Just to give you the high-level briefing before we jump in, we have prediction markets hitting mainstream escape velocity. We have massive regulatory legislation edging closer to reality.
And then the OG derivatives exchange, BitMEX's, announcing its final sunset.
Yeah, all while capital flows are just surging. We're talking $900 million in ETF inflows and MicroStrategy nearing 900,000 Bitcoin. So there is a lot to cover.
For sure. And if we look at the essential takeaways, first, zero-knowledge proofs are offering this new lifeline for quantum-vulnerable Bitcoin, though, as we'll discuss, Satoshi's stash remains entirely exposed.
Right, the big catch.
Second, prediction markets have officially outgrown their Web3 niche. Logging over $27 billion in World Cup volume.
Unbelievable numbers.
Yeah. Third, the Clarity Act is inches from the finish line, which introduces high-stakes ethics rules while finally offering safe harbor protections for developers.
Which is huge for the builders.
Exactly. And finally, BitMEX shutting down really signals a permanent shift in market structure as volume moves to decentralized venues.
So let's trace how this all played out, because there is this fascinating narrative thread connecting all these events.
Yeah, let's get into it.
The week opened on Monday, with the market just intensely staring down that existential threat I mentioned earlier, Q-Day.
Right, the fear that a quantum computer could compromise, over 34% of the existing Bitcoin supply.
Yeah, a massive chunk. And for the longest time, the debate was centered around this controversial proposal called BIP 361.
Which basically suggested we might have to force users to freeze or even abandon vulnerable legacy addresses.
Exactly, just to protect the wider network. It was basically a doomsday forced migration scenario.
But then a quantum research firm called Project 11 completely flipped that narrative on Monday.
Right. They revealed a functional prototype for a zero-knowledge proof tool. And the crazy part, it runs in just 243 milliseconds on a standard laptop.
Which fundamentally changes the entire defensive posture of the network.
Okay, so let's unpack how this actually works for you listening, because zero-knowledge proofs can sound like pure magic.
They really can.
If I understand the mechanism, it's like I have a combination lock on a safe. Usually, to open it and move my money, I have to punch the numbers in right in front of a security guard.
Right, risking that a quantum computer is, looking over your shoulder.
Exactly. But this tool lets me mathematically prove to the guard that I know the numbers, allowing me to move the funds to a quantum-safe vault without ever actually showing the combination.
The analogy holds up, yeah. But the underlying mechanism is where this just gets brilliant.
How so?
Well, the zero-knowledge proof relies entirely on navigating hierarchical, deterministic, or HD wallet trees.
Okay.
So think of an HD wallet like a master skeleton key that mathematically generates millions of smaller subkeys.
Right.
When you use this new tool, you're using the zero-knowledge proof to show you hold that master skeleton key.
Oh, I see.
Which inherently proves you own the specific subkey locking that vulnerable vault. You never actually expose the vulnerable key to the public ledger.
You just prove your ownership of the mathematical tree it belongs to.
Exactly. It shifts the entire conversation from a destructive, forced migration to just a secure, recoverable lock.
But wait, HD wallets were introduced back in 2012, right?
Yeah.
BIP 32.
Yeah, that's right.
So if this entire defense mechanism relies on proving you own a parent master key to save a child subkey, what happens to all the Bitcoin mined before 2012? Specifically, what about Satoshi Nakamoto's estimated 1.1 million Bitcoin?
Yeah, they are completely unprotected by this new tool.
Wow.
Those early coins were mined randomly. There are no seed phrases, there are no derivation paths, no parent keys.
They're just solitary, isolated locks.
Exactly. Because there is no master skeleton key to prove ownership of, Project 11's architecture simply cannot work for them.
So while modern holders gain this vital layer of certainty against the quantum clock, Satoshi's original dormant treasures remain entirely exposed.
Yeah. Technology is securing the future, but it just cannot reach back far enough to protect the genesis of the network.
That is a terrifying blind spot. And, while developers were busy trying to outsmart future supercomputers on Monday, regulators were aggressively fighting the present.
Right.
Yeah. We saw France order a nationwide internet service provider block on Polymarket. They labeled it illegal gambling right in the middle of the World Cup.
Which is a classic reactionary move.
Totally. And at the same time, my entire social media feed was losing its mind because Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong switched his profile picture to a CryptoPunk.
Oh, man.
People were shouting that the bull market was fully back just because of an avatar change.
Yeah, we have to ruthlessly separate signal from noise here.
Please do.
A CEO changing an avatar is just fun timeline sentiment. It gives retail communities something to rally around for a few hours.
Right.
But it is completely irrelevant to the macro realities we are tracking in this deep dive. What actually matters is that French regulatory reflex.
Because they're panicking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When a new technology captures mainstream attention faster than existing legal frameworks can categorize it, the immediate reaction of a sovereign state is almost always containment.
And the sheer scale of that French regulatory panic makes a lot more sense when you look at the data that dropped on Tuesday.
The prediction market volumes.
Yes. The 2026 World Cup propelled prediction markets to absolute record-breaking heights. Total volume hit $27.56 billion.
Just massive.
Kalshi dominated with almost half of that, pulling in $13.59 billion and onboarding 3 million new users. Polymarket hit $10.59 billion.
Yeah.
I mean, total prediction volume across the space in June cleared $50 billion.
And you have to realize the infrastructure required to process that kind of capital throughput is immense.
It really is.
Retail users are choosing these platforms because they offer real-time, event-based Web3 forecasting that traditional Web2 sportsbooks simply cannot match.
Right. A legacy sportsbook just gives you static odds on a game.
Exactly. A decentralized prediction market gives you a dynamic, fluid pricing mechanism for reality itself, and it's accessible globally in real time.
I am going to push back on the longevity of this, though. I mean, 50 billion is a massive number, but are these 3 million new users actually going to stick around for niche crypto events or political debates?
That's the real question.
Or are they just here for Lionel Messi and the World Cup final? Because if they all cash out and leave when the tournament ends, this isn't a paradigm shift. It is just a seasonal spike.
Well, the retention data and the infrastructure build-out actually tell a different story.
Okay, how so?
Look at the competitive dynamics at play. Outcome Markets announced permissionless deployment on Hyperliquid this week.
Right.
And for context, Hyperliquid is a high-performance, decentralized Layer 1 blockchain that's purpose-built to handle incredibly fast derivatives trading.
Okay.
The fact that prediction markets are being deployed on that kind of institutional-grade infrastructure shows that builders are preparing for massive, sustained throughput.
They're not just building this for a one-month soccer tournament.
Exactly. They are building it to commoditize information and forecast global events on a permanent basis.
And while retail is feeding this absolute mania on prediction platforms, institutional capital is executing a completely different playbook in the background.
Yeah, the MicroStrategy buy.
Right. They quietly completed another $1 billion buy, bringing their treasury up to 843,775 Bitcoin.
It is fascinating to watch these two entirely different engines of adoption running at full speed simultaneously.
It really is. You have this chaotic, event-driven retail culture on one side, and then cold, calculated institutional accumulation on the other.
And that duality really defines the current market structure. Plus, that massive influx of global capital on Web3 platforms forces the hand of lawmakers.
Which is exactly why Wednesday felt like a pressure cooker.
Oh, absolutely.
The market had been chopping sideways for a while. The AI-focused equity trades were starting to fade, and capital was just desperately looking for a new catalyst.
And that catalyst arrived courtesy of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
Yeah, he publicly stated that the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act was at the, quote, 1-yard line.
And the market instantly priced this in.
Instantly. Polymarket odds for the bill's passage jumped from 32% to 43%, and Bitcoin rallied 2% towards $67,000.
But what drove the real frenzy were the unverified reports emerging about a White House ethics deal.
Right. Regarding President Trump's personal crypto holdings, we even saw reports that White House advisor Patrick Witt delayed his military training to stay back and assist with the final negotiations.
Now, looking at this strictly through the lens of market mechanics, the political personalities involved here are entirely secondary to what the market is actually pricing in.
Right, we're just looking at the facts of the legislation itself.
Exactly. The negotiations surrounding that ethics provision represent the final friction point of this legislation. Capital markets do not care about the optics. They care about certainty.
They want the rules of the game.
Yeah. The market is desperate for a concrete regulatory framework in the United States, and it reacts aggressively to any signal that this framework is finally arriving.
It is a stark contrast, though, to look at those high-level political negotiations moving billions of dollars in market cap, and then look at the on-the-ground reality for builders on that exact same day.
You're talking about Movement Labs.
Yeah. Movement Labs filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on Wednesday with over $1 million in liabilities.
It's brutal.
It is a sobering reminder that while the macro picture might look optimistic on Capitol Hill, operating a startup in this space remains incredibly unforgiving.
Building decentralized infrastructure is hard, and that is exactly why the regulatory framework being negotiated matters so much to these teams.
Right. Rumors drove Wednesday's price action, but Thursday actually delivered the legislative receipts.
This 616-page reality check?
Yes. Senate Republicans finally released the updated text for the Clarity Act.
A massive document.
Huge. It includes a sunset date of January 20, 2029, which prohibits federal officials from issuing or sponsoring digital assets, and it places enforcement directly in the hands of the Department of Justice.
But for the builders we were just talking about, the most crucial component is the integration of the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act, or the BRCA.
Yeah.
The BRCA is the linchpin for the entire domestic developer ecosystem.
Okay, break that down for us. Because if I am a developer building a decentralized protocol in my garage right now, does the inclusion of the BRCA mean I can finally stop looking over my shoulder, wondering if the SEC is going to serve me with a subpoena?
Well, if the Clarity Act passes in its current form, yes.
Really?
Yeah. The BRCA creates a specific legally binding safe harbor. It exempts non-custodial software developers from being classified as money transmitters.
Okay, let's explore why that distinction is so vital.
So, if you are non-custodial, it means you write the code for a smart contract, but you never actually hold, control, or take custody of a user's funds.
Right.
Under previous ambiguous frameworks, simply writing that open source code could theoretically carry the exact same heavy compliance burden as running a traditional bank.
Which is an impossible standard for a developer writing code in their bedroom.
Exactly the point. By removing that threat, the United States prevents a massive brain drain. It creates a legally clear environment that keeps blockchain innovation and the venture capital that funds it within its borders rather than driving it to offshore jurisdictions.
And we are already seeing capital front-running this optimism. We had Bitcoin ETFs pull in a $900 million weekly inflow, which is the largest we have seen since May.
The traditional finance world is clearly gearing up for this incoming clarity.
They definitely are. But, it is not a total victory lap yet. SEC Commissioner Hester Pierce came out and specifically warned that crypto vaults and on-chain lending protocols may still be classified as securities.
Yeah, the regulatory tug-of-war over what actually constitutes a security in decentralized finance is far from over. The boundaries are still heavily contested.
Absolutely. But while traditional finance prepares to enter this newly regulated environment, Friday reminded us that the crypto-native infrastructure we rely on is undergoing a brutal changing of the guard.
You're referring to the BitMEX news?
Yeah. BitMEX announced it will permanently shut down all operations on September 23, 2026.
This is genuinely the end of an era.
It really is. For anyone new to the space, it is hard to overstate how important BitMEX was. They had an 11-year run that fundamentally altered global market structure.
They invented the 100x perpetual swap.
Right. Today, perps are everywhere, but back then, the idea that you could borrow 100 times your capital to bet on the price direction of an asset without ever having to settle or own the underlying asset, it was revolutionary.
It birthed an entirely new way to trade. They pioneered a financial instrument that basically outgrew the venue itself.
Right.
But if we look at the second-order consequences of this shutdown, it is not a story about a company failing due to hacks or insolvency.
No, not at all.
BitMEX is leaving behind an incredibly rare legacy: 0 customer funds lost to hacks in over a decade. In this industry, a pristine security record over an 11-year span is just a monumental achievement.
So why close the doors if the security is pristine? And they literally invented the most popular trading product in crypto.
Because of the fast-paced maturation of digital asset infrastructure.
Okay.
Institutional and retail volume is migrating toward highly efficient, decentralized, perpetual venues.
Right, like we mentioned with Hyperliquid.
Exactly. Traders want the leverage of a perpetual swap, but they want it on trustless, on-chain infrastructure like Hyperliquid or DYDX, rather than trusting a centralized entity.
The market simply evolved beyond the pioneer.
Exactly. BitMEX is shutting down because the structural shift toward decentralized trading is permanent.
And just to underscore how rare BitMEX's clean security record is, look at the harsh on-chain reality that hit on the exact same day they announced their exit.
The Friday hacks.
Yeah. Major escorts hit AFX Trade, Verus, and the B2 network. We're talking about a combined $35.5 million loss in a single Friday.
It is a crazy dichotomy.
It really is. You have the graceful, secure exit of an 11-year-old centralized giant on one side.
And then the bleeding edge of decentralized finance still suffering catastrophic, multi-million-dollar vulnerabilities on the other. It highlights the severe risks that are still present. I mean, we are trying to build entirely new, trustless financial systems. The transition from legacy centralized infrastructure to decentralized protocols is messy, it's expensive, and it is heavily targeted by malicious actors.
Well, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. Let's distill this down for the listener. What actually mattered in the sources we reviewed this week?
Well, two structural developments will have lasting multi-year impacts.
Okay.
First, the Senate's release of the Clarity Act text, specifically the integration of the BRCA safe harbor for non-custodial developers that fundamentally shapes the future of U.S. capital flows and technological innovation.
Right.
Second, the $27.5 billion validation of prediction markets. That kind of volume proves a massive shift in retail adoption toward decentralized, event-based forecasting.
For sure.
Furthermore, BitMEX's closure marks a permanent evolution in market structure. It really cements the migration from centralized to decentralized derivatives trading.
And what was mostly noise, we touched on it earlier, but Brian Armstrong's CryptoPunk avatar change and the minor VIP social media friction that surrounded it.
Yeah, totally noise.
It is entertaining for the timeline, but sentiment on social media rarely translates to actual structural market shifts.
Exactly. As for what to watch next, the key catalysts are clear.
What are we looking for?
Will the Clarity Act secure the necessary Democratic votes to clear the Senate before the congressional recess? The mechanics of those final negotiations will drive short-term price action and dictate institutional deployment.
And on the retail side?
Can platforms like Kalshi and Polymarket retain even a fraction of those 3 million newly onboarded users now that the World Cup has ended? If the retention data holds up over the next month, we are looking at a permanent new sector in Web3, rather than just a sports betting fad.
We started this deep dive talking about the theoretical threat of quantum computing and the brilliant new zero-knowledge proofs designed to protect modern crypto wallets.
Right, the Project 11 stuff.
Yeah. We talked about how hierarchical deterministic trees act as a master key to save those funds. But I want to leave you with a lingering question.
Okay.
We know Satoshi Nakamoto's 1.1 million early Bitcoin are fundamentally vulnerable to a future quantum computer because they lack those parent keys. They cannot be secured by this new technology.
Yeah, they're stuck.
So what happens to the psychology of the entire global market and the price of the asset itself? The very second one of those dormant, legendary, unprotected coins finally moves.
That remains the ultimate unknown hanging over the network.
It really does. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. If you want to stay ahead of the noise and catch these insights daily, make sure you follow Nifty Noon on X and subscribe to our newsletter on Substack. Until next time, stay curious and keep looking for the signal in the noise.